G'day and welcome to Space Insiders. My name's Tony Sewell and here with my partner in crime, Rob Ruyak. How you going, Rob?
Good, Tony. How's down under?
Oh man, it's been great. An awesome almost 4 weeks now. A couple of weeks holiday, a couple of weeks working down here. I'm actually in Sydney at the moment, catching up with some of my colleagues. We've also been doing a bit of scouting out a few locations where we're going to live when we move down here at the end of the year. So that's been exciting, and getting the kids excited about that.
So awesome, man. I'm so happy for you. It's going to be so great to move back down there. I've been to Sydney several times in my life, and I think it's one of the most beautiful places I've ever been. It's
Yeah,
just
well, it's where
great.
we first met in person too, in Sydney,
It
around the
is,
corner from
yep.
where I am right
It's
now.
it, it's a
So
special
it was,
place for you and me too. Yeah, I remember we had
yeah,
coffee and we met there, and yeah,
with
what it was
Daryl
about.
Shook.
And Daryl Shook, and I think it was about, for those that have been listening, we interviewed him a couple weeks ago. And yeah, we had a really fun time. And then it was almost a year later that we started working together. So
Yeah,
yeah, it's a great place. Highly recommend anyone that has not been to Australia definitely needs to go, and you need to see Sydney. It's a great
yeah,
place.
for sure, for sure. Well, Rob, we've got a great guest joining us today. Will Crowe, the founder and CEO of HEO Space.
Yeah, he's so fun. Great personality. I mean, he's just so smart. We're going to talk a little bit about his background and PhD, and how his studies of asteroids and trying to monitor asteroids led him to a whole new business model and capability for looking at satellites for
Yeah.
both commercial and government applications. And it's really he's really good at explaining like why is that important and how he came about it. So it's really fun.
Yeah, I think people are going to enjoy this episode. I say this every week, but I do really mean it. I think a couple of things that I think people will find really interesting is just kind of the origin story for the HEO, and I guess what I really like about this discussion that we're going to have is how um, the business they've created and how they've impacted this segment of non-Earth imaging is what we will discover when you listen to it is that this is something that, I mean, creating this segment was it was almost sort of uniquely, they were uniquely positioned as an Australian company to be able to do this, and it's a really fascinating discussion how we get into that. Yeah, make sure you check it out. Before we get to that, Rob, just looking at news and things things have been in the news in the space industry the last week. As I was actually on the flight up here, I was having a listen to Space Capital's podcast. They put out their quarterly report, and I thought there were some interesting trends that they were kind of highlighting. But they kind of framed it around Q2, particularly given the amount of uncertainty in the market broadly, that it has shown space tech overperforming in a number of areas.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for sharing that with me because I read through it as well, and I think it's really well done. Um, the the way that they break down the industry and then they actually talk about how how you can look at the investment and the trends along them are pretty interesting. I think they break it down into and correct me if I'm wrong here, Tony, infrastructure, distribution, applications.
Mm.
And if you can access this online. But one of the things I noticed was they don't only break the industry down into those different segments and talk about various trends. They also related to kind of general market trends and how different indices have performed over time, and how all that could be correlated. Like one example in particular, which I liked, was how the whole trend around SPACs that happened kind of several years ago. What it looked like when a company that was trying to raise enough public capital went through a SPAC or other type of IPO, how the valuation changed quickly over time
Yeah.
from kind of the initial day to what it would look like over the weeks and months following, and kind of the reasons why. They look at the multiples for several companies, and in one particular, Voyager Space, which you and I talked about a couple of weeks ago, I think it
Yeah.
was, which I think is a fascinating company. They talk a little bit about what the predictive value could actually look like, just given the fact that the historical trends of some of their competition or others like them. And then they make a recommendation on where they might be able to kind of increase their top line and keep that valuation. And they specifically call out defense and national security,
Yeah.
specifically for them. And I think you and I talked a little bit about how the company, I think, uniquely has defined those segments right out of the gate. So I thought that was interesting too, how they just try to correlate, historical trends around public offerings and public capital raises with this particular industry and what it might mean, and where maybe companies that are going through it now where they might want to target just based on the analysis that they do. So I highly
Yeah.
recommend others read it. Yeah.
Yeah, I really like what they're doing. I'll have to reach out to Chad and Justice. Maybe we can see if we can get one of them to join us on the show. I think something unique that they're doing. I mean, they just invest in space companies, and as you said, they are trying to make this bit more mainstream, and I guess show how people can I guess educate people on what's going on in the startup
Hmm.
space. It was kind of interesting how they were talking about, like you talked about Voyager. They in their podcast they referenced the couple of the big IPOs for Voyager and Planet, and how they really kind of taken off, but they pulled back a little bit, and they kind of, I guess, sort of posed the question as like the IPO investors are making a lot of money, but these companies have got to really translate, I guess, move towards the demonstrating strong top line growth. And I guess they kind of highlighted that I guess one of the challenges for investors in this space is helping people understand the fundamentals of for space companies. It can be a bit tricky for investors that don't have the technical background. But I thought that was cool. They also talked about, I guess, the momentum. We've talked about the momentum building in defense in Europe, and how that's having a real the government investment there having a real kind of profound effect on what the space industry looks like there. They called out the potential sort of combination of the space businesses of Airbus, Thales Alenia, and Leonardo potentially in the second half of the year. I know you kind of work in this space, Rob. I don't know if you had any thoughts on that.
Well, I think it's kind of cool. There's a bar graph that they have in this report where they talk about they show or they illustrate the segmentation of I think it's not just venture capital, but I think it's a kind of across the board investment by country by year. And you can see how the U.S. has constantly been increasing year over year. I'm not really sure what percentages. I don't think they call it out, but it's been. You can see it increase, and you can see how Europe is an investor. They're the second largest in this particular analysis, but it's remained pretty consistent. So the fact that only recently the NATO members, they set a new pledge to contribute 5% of their GDP to defense spending going forward. I think it's exciting for the space industry because now you might have a much bigger market that you can sell
Mm.
into. And it's really just about figuring that out. So I think that's also, I liked that call out to your point with this kind of global rebalancing. There's a bit of the isolationist thing happening in other countries, especially those in Europe, are looking at this and they're saying, like, we have to have a plan, and that we've mentioned this before too. There's a rearm strategy, and they call out investment. I'd love to see, like, what is that bar going to look like next year and the following. How much are
Yeah.
we going to see that investment increase in Europe? So that's the part of it that I really liked, and I'm excited to see how that changes over the next couple of years.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, and I think as a segue to our guest, I did was really interesting how they called out, I guess, the interest in that they're seeing from an investment perspective in the emerging parts of the space industry. So um, they talk about how satellite and I think launch
Hmm.
really have an outsized share of investment today. but there's growth in particularly in logistics and space situational awareness, and I guess that sustainability topic, which we'll be able to discuss with Will as well.
Yep, absolutely.
All right. Well, let's get to the interview, shall we, Rob?
Let's do it, Tony. I'm
All
excited to
right.
talk
See you
to
in a
him.
minute. All right. Welcome back to the show, and g'day, Will Crowe from HEO Space. How you doing, Will?
Hey, good. Thanks. Good to be here.
Mate, thanks for joining. Really excited about the discussion today.
Yeah, same. It's going to be fun.
All right, now we're all sort of calling in from different locations today. I'm in Sydney. Well, Will, you're in Sydney too. We probably should have done this together. Rob, where are you calling in from today?
Yeah, I'm in Orlando, Florida. It is not cool here.
No.
It's like a blanket of heat every time you walk anywhere down here. But yeah, doing some customer meetings and some other personal things. So, it's always fun to come down to Florida, once in a while. But it is definitely that hot time of year for sure.
Well, man, it's beautiful. I'm just sort of looking out over Pitt Street Mall in Sydney. It's good. It's going to be a beautiful day here. So it's a pity I have to be working today. But anyway, Will, I was really excited to get an opportunity to talk to you today because I think what you are doing with your company is really interesting and something we haven't talked about before. So perhaps just to get us started, could you just introduce yourself and HEO Space?
Yeah, definitely. So, Will Crowe, co-founder and CEO of HEO, and what we do is take photos of satellites from other satellites. So we use our software, kind of work with other companies that own satellites, typically for Earth observation. And during their downtime, which actually is a reasonable amount. So over the ocean, they don't have a lot to do. There's not much to look at while they're over the ocean. During those times, we can apply our software, turn the cameras
Mm.
around on the satellites, and take photos of other spacecraft as they fly past. And this kind of area is actually, it's got a name, not a great name. It's called non-Earth imagery, or NEI. And really what it's about is just taking objects of or taking images of objects, sorry, in space that aren't the Earth. Sometimes Earth is in the background, so Earth is
Yeah.
a part of NEI as well. But yeah, that's the name, and it's kind of sticking, and that's what we're dealing with here. So that's what we do it here.
Yeah, I remember we met a couple of years ago, and you were telling me about this term of non-Earth imaging. Super interesting. I mean, is this? It doesn't seem like there's a lot of companies doing this. Is this something that HEO is really kind of pioneering?
Yes, in a way. So yeah, HEO actually, I guess, invented this technology, but it was a reinvention. So this technology was already around for at least the last 5 decades, so 50 years. And I believe it started, there's a declassified report now of the first known NEI image. And it was in the 70s, and it was a US satellite looking at a Russian satellite as it flew
Mm.
close by. And I can't remember quite if it was an accident at first or if it was just convenient that they thought maybe we'll try and turn it around and see what they see. So it's been happening for the last 5 decades, but it was super secret. No one was allowed to know that this was a thing. You couldn't even say the name of it outside of a specially protected room known as a skiff.
Mm.
And so people like us just had no idea it was possible. Now, fortunately, people like myself were really interested in asteroid flyby missions, where you fly past an asteroid and you take a lot of images as you fly past. And NASA really pioneered that technique and has done many of these missions. So I knew something similar was possible. And actually, the company was originally set up to take photos of other objects, not satellites, because
Yeah.
we're really interested in asteroids. But there wasn't really a customer base there. So fortunately, people in uniform said, "Hey, maybe you should try and look at other satellites." So we did, and then they freaked out. So they're like, "How did you do that? Just two guys in a garage in Sydney." So yeah, that was kind of the origin story.
Well, you have your PhD in that, right? You did,
Yeah,
didn't you? Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So
Yeah.
my PhD, there was a paper that I wrote and I won a prize for to look at asteroids as they flew closer than the moon. And every year we've got
Mm.
more than 200 that we know about. There's probably more than that again, flying within that distance. The really cool thing about that is that when they fly that close, you don't need to leave Earth orbit to do asteroid flyby missions. So I was really excited
Mm.
about that. I was like, you can do it so much more cheaply. But yeah, again, market dynamics kind of prevented us from, I guess, having a successful business there. But really, fortunately, we had replicated this 5-decade-old technology, and we're just applying it to different objects, I guess. So really lucky in many ways, but that's how things came to be.
So who are some of your key customers? Like who are the sorts of customers that are buying the products?
There's a few. So yeah, probably. I mean, the customer that so after they freaked out in the U.S. government, we got an investment through Incutel, which is kind of
Yeah.
invests on behalf of many U.S. customers, and then we started getting contracts from U.S. intelligence customers, and then the Department of Defense after that as well. So I think what was lucky about the whole situation is that we had stumbled on a problem that was already being kind of solved by government's own systems. Like they were using their spy satellites to image adversary satellites at that time. But they'd run into this issue where the adversary said, well, we're just going to launch hundreds of satellites then, and you won't know which one to look at. And you don't actually have enough of your own satellites to look at these. So necessarily we had to come up with a software first solution and kind of APIing into a bunch of satellites that other people owned. And so we were able to do it at relatively low cost. And so, yeah, the customer was really excited about that. And so the US government is a customer of ours through several different agencies. The other thing, though, is that allies had seen this technology, but they weren't able to build it themselves, with a couple of exceptions. But primarily, they weren't able to do this themselves. So getting access to this technology was really important to them as well. So we've got a lot of allied governments as customers. And then regulators never really had access to this because, you know, they weren't necessarily in those rooms having those conversations. So I think they're really excited though, because regulating space is actually really hard, and it used to be based on relationships. And now with so many cowboys in space, the relationships are kind of void. And so we need to think of ways to properly regulate space now that we can't trust people at their word anymore. So
Right.
the community is just not tight anymore for us to do it that way, and that's okay. But I think this is potentially a regulatory tool. I think there are commercial cases as well, but yeah, maybe I'll pause there.
So what do you think some of those are actually? Yeah, like what are
Well,
some of those commercial?
Yeah, so actually, we're getting paid today to help commercial companies minimize the total cost of the lifetime of their space assets. So, on any other industry on Earth, so aircraft industry, naval industry, building industry, car fleet industry, name an industry, everyone's doing inspection and maintenance on their very valuable assets to make sure that they minimize total costs. In space, that really hasn't been done. So there's people kind of troubleshooting when a satellite fails, but there's not many good ways to monitor a vehicle. And when it is monitored, it's using onboard sensors. But when the satellite stops communicating with the ground because it's broken, there's no way to kind of verify what's happening. So, I mean, I actually did condition monitoring in the train industry for a couple of years. And so for me, it was a no-brainer. It's like, actually, you've got to monitor assets, and you've got to do it remotely from a second asset. And then you've got to do that broadly, like do that look at pretty much every asset at a regular cadence. And then those assets with problems, that's when you bring in the maintenance vehicles. So I think there's a lot of great companies like Starfish Space, Astroscale, ClearSpace, a bunch of others that are looking to do that maintenance piece. But it's kind of needs to go hand in hand with the inspection piece. So for me, it was very obvious, but I guess that is partly my background. And I don't think in space we're thinking enough about minimizing total cost. So people are saying, well, just throw this away. And it's like, cool, you're going to throw a $10 million satellite away?
Yeah.
Or you could get like 6 months or maybe even more kind of runway out of operating it in a slightly more nuanced way. So Yeah, I think I'm really passionate about that because I think really that's the true way to sustainability, but also to get in space economy is start to do this kind of thing.
That's such a great point. Rob and I, in the intro to the podcast, we talked about the Space Capital guys just put out their quarterly report, and they were just talking about trends. And one of the trends they're seeing is that there's a lot more interest, like in investment in emerging segments of the space industry, not just satellites and Earth observation, but and they specifically called out space logistics and space situational awareness and sustainability. So I mean, it's such a good point and sort of logical point, and like a partnership with a company like HEO for like on orbit servicing and that sort of thing. I mean, it seems like a no brainer. How are those companies thinking about it?
Yeah, well, I mean, so the maintenance companies, I think they've got to think more clearly about this. So we've got a partnership with Astroscale, for example, and I think we've released some of our work publicly that we've done together. There are other companies, like typically we're kind of, silenced a little bit in our agreements with other companies. So I think I want to change that somewhat and just say, actually, it's okay. Things are allowed to break in space. Things break on Earth all the time, but there are remedies. And we should accept that that's going to happen in space and that inspection is actually empowering, not kind of, I guess, something that you should do that's ashamed or should be shamed. So I think there's a cultural shift that we need in the space sector. I'm here for it. I think, interestingly, everyone outside of the space sector is like, why aren't you doing that already? So it's kind of like, let's create this cultural shift in the sector.
Yeah, because I was talking to a guy earlier in the week about rail and connecting rail, and he was talking about like just how safety has become such a big deal with these trains transporting stuff in the US, that they drive these trains at regular intervals through these tunnels that are just loaded with cameras, just so they can analyze every single piece and do preventative maintenance. And it seems crazy as you say, on these massive investments that they're not thinking about how to do that. But
that's pretty cool, though.
Yeah.
So they just put cameras all over the tunnels, and as it's going by, they just take lots of pictures.
Yeah, because they've got as a result of these train derailments in the US, they've which have had just profound impacts on the local communities. It's
well, to that point on like wondering why some of this stuff hasn't existed for a long time, there's a company I met recently called Gecko Robotics, and they've developed a robot that actually climbs things like bridges and oil rigs and things, very dangerous places where you don't want humans to be, and it does various types of scanning to basically do a digital twin replica and try to find cracks and try to reduce the cost of maintenance. I mean, and I was actually also surprised. We have how many bridges just in the U.S. alone, and we really didn't seem to know, what the lifetime of that is and how to maintain it. But on that topic, Will, too. I mean, this is all related, but for the business case for HEO in terms of, let's say, the commercial side of things. So the maintenance and the the auditing, or maybe not auditing, but just like kind of the review of an asset on orbit for a particular customer. Is there a particular orbit where that business case actually makes more sense? A lot of people listening might not know the difference, but I mean, to me, it seems like more of those assets that are in MEO and GEO would probably be the ones that would be the targets. And LEO, some people, at least I hear, you're more of an expert, but some people, when I hear, they talk about LEO, they kind of equate it somewhat to like cloud computing and thin server horizontal scaling environments where, if it's cheaper to launch, cheaper to build these kind of spacecraft in LEO, then why not just let it burn up and throw it away, launch another one? Yeah. So is that true? Is the business case really more in those outer orbits, or just want to learn a little bit more about that?
No, that's actually a really good, interesting point. So, I mean, short answer is no. I think LEO is where the monster of in-orbit servicing is going to happen. We'll talk about why. But I think it's interesting. I think Elon Musk had a really good insight about like the fairing of the rocket, for example. So he was like, great, we're reusing most of the rocket. We still toss away the fairing. That costs $5 million for us to furnish a new fairing every time. So he made this great analogy where he said to his team, he's like, if that was a like pallet of money just falling through the sky, you would try to catch it, right? And
That's a good
I think
point.
that really,
Yeah.
exactly. That really hit home for me. So I think, and I
Yeah.
think it's true in Leo as well. Like these satellite, like I've heard the estimates of like less than $2 million for these Starlink satellites. It's really like yep, sure, maybe for the build, but also you had to integrate it. Um, you had to like pay for the rocket launch, even though yours is subsidized by the main business. You had to do all these other things to get that asset into orbit. So I think the all-in cost is probably closer to $10 million, and that's before the, I guess, lost opportunity cost of a satellite
Yeah.
dying and then you not having coverage over a certain region. Like people keep getting annoyed by Starlink going down, even though it's very good. It's not perfect. So having more units kind of available is an important thing. So I think there is a huge opportunity cost. And I think really the reason people haven't been doing this is actually the maintenance companies aren't doing themselves favor, because they're saying, great, every time we dock with you, that's $50 million. And then the company's like, well, even our all-in cost of this asset is $10 million. So no.
Yeah.
I don't think I should reveal our prices, but it's crazy low. It's so low.
Yeah.
You're doing this. Like, you should be hammering this home. And then we give you the knowledge to know if you should bring in that maintenance craft. And by the way, if we know how many times on average we need to bring in a maintenance craft, we can probably defray that cost to less than $5 million per engagement. And now for the most high value task, it actually makes sense to do that. So if we can image a spacecraft, say, hey, it's in safe mode, and none of your commands that you're sending up to it are actually getting it off safe mode. So you should just send a maintenance spacecraft up there just to turn it around so the antenna can pick up your signal. That becomes just a no-brainer. That's like, for a $10 million satellite, maybe you're paying $5 million, but you save $5 million. I mean, it's awesome.
Right.
So I feel like people just aren't thinking about the unit economics in that way.
Well, not to mention the time. Like, you can't just launch a new satellite. Like,
exactly. Yeah,
like
and that's the opportunity cost again.
like the
Anyway,
scheduling and the manufacturer, and
exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm getting
not yet, right? I mean, some want to try, right? I mean, the Astras of the world and those, right? But we'll see, I guess.
So Will, you've been growing this business over 9 years or so. But like, are there particular technology, like, have there been technology changes that have really sort of enabled you to do this?
Yeah. So actually, just on the last point, so I just wanted to make clear we do have commercial customers. So like the use case I gave, saving a $10 million satellite. Like in the case that we helped with, we didn't need the maintenance satellites come up, but that is a real case, and so we've saved companies tens of millions of dollars already. So I just wanted to make that clear. But and maybe we should be charging more, but that's kind of I see this as kind of like a whole of ecosystem opportunity. But back to can you just
technical enablers? Like, what are some of the things that you have, technologies you have access to now that sort of 15, 20 years ago you couldn't have made this a reality?
You know what's really sad, Tony? I think there probably weren't that many technical enablers that changed. I think it was just a cultural shift that was required for our business to exist. So I think you could make an argument about the number of sensors. So maybe 15 years ago, there weren't enough sensors for us to tie them together and do this at scale. So maybe it's just sheer volume of satellites launching. But that's probably it. I would say the next technical enabler is the AI revolution. So again, the majority of technology for that was already existing. Most of the ML or the AI we use today is just classic ML techniques. I do think AI, the current kind of take of large language models, and maybe it's like a large space model or something, I think that will bring something new. Although I think most of the value for that will be maybe in the 2-year time frame. There's kind of like people have got, now that LLMs exist, people have got to think about how to apply them to different kind of landscapes. So it's a little bit depressing, isn't it? It's like this business should have probably been around 10 years earlier. I guess maybe the bigger enabler is the market. So just sheer volume of satellites has made this possible. Because really, I would say we're in the wilderness for the first 3 years of our business, mainly because no one believed SpaceX's projections except us. And we're like, we've got to be ready for this. And now that's happened. And now, like, adversary nations are launching a lot of satellites as well. So, really, it was a market enabler rather than a technology enabler, if that makes sense.
Hmm. Totally. And
Yeah.
and HEO's you're a big cloud user as well.
Yeah, so much cloud. Yeah. We're a great customer to Amazon. I would say I was thinking about this over the weekend. I was like, geez, that cloud costs a high. But yeah, like, I think if you're going to spend money on the cloud or on hardware on orbit, I would say dollar for dollar, you're probably getting a good deal on the cloud, and people are underinvesting in it. The way I think about it is that if you've got good software and a bad hardware, then or maybe good software but moderate hardware, you're going to win. If you've got moderate hardware and moderate to bad software, you're going to lose in space. So I think that's really important. The other thing I'll say, and I think, I don't think this is obvious to a lot of space companies. So I think a lot of investors ask us, they're like, how do you get your software on a satellite? And sometimes we do have our software on a satellite, but most of a satellite software is actually kind of disaggregated, I guess. It's like there's firmware and basic functions rolling on the satellite, but the majority of interesting application use cases, analyses, but also tasking and kind of like how you operate and move around a satellite, most of that's happening on the ground, which is really interesting. So I think this has been a quiet revolution, but it's a real one. And I think a lot of people ask us, how do we make things work end to end? But I think maybe the reason why it's so easy is because everyone's running on the cloud already. And so it's just like, now it's like any other software application and tying together any other business. So I think that's been an interesting but quiet revolution.
So, Will, that's interesting. So I feel like there's a lot of debate in the industry around how much compute, storage, intelligence actually needs to be pushed to orbit. So what are your thoughts on that? Do you think, it's too hard? There's, the swap space, there's not enough. And, maybe there's not even like the right use cases per se, but, or like what you just said, there's so much availability of, high speed, fiber on Earth that as long as you can get the data up and down pretty quickly, a lot of that intelligence can reside here on Earth. What are your thoughts on that? Do you see a trend where there will be a need for more compute and intelligence on the spacecraft?
You've nailed it, man. Like, yeah, you're right. It's just getting that data up and down. I would say though, it's interesting, right? Like now, if you say, okay, it's pretty much like an extension of the Earth-based infrastructure, and now we can just analogize with the Earth again. So it's like if more compute's happening on the edge on Earth, more compute should happen on the edge in space. And I think there's a few reasons for that. So yeah, it's kind of like some of it's like conserving bandwidth, but I think companies will come along and just have just ridiculous amounts of bandwidth. I would say there's other reasons like speed to answer or speed to insight. So you probably want to do some of the compute on the edge then. And then what's great about that is then you're generating more value to your customer because they can get more value from or give more value to their customers. So I would say that's how people should be thinking about this because otherwise if you say there's this constraint, therefore you should do edge compute, I don't buy that. I just think people are building really great infrastructure. And by the way, like there's so many silly decisions happening that make space companies slow at downloading data. Like they don't want to pay for a certain pass over a certain ground station because they're like, oh, I can shave off, a few cents on the dollar off our costs and pass that on to the customer. But in reality, it's like, well, if you paid for that and then you knew to ask your customer for more money, everyone would win. The customer would get a better solution. You'd make more money. So I think there's a lot of silly things like that happening in the space economy.
Yeah.
And I guess it's just a sign that it's not an efficient economy yet, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. No, I think it makes a lot of sense, and that's why I kind of maybe provided an answer to the question as I was asking it because I do think that's where it's. I do think that's where I think a lot of experts can I think a lot of experts are kind of coming out and say those are really good ideas, but I think the reality is we really may not need that. Or to your point, instead of just taking a whole picture of a satellite, maybe you're looking for a particular thing, like what direction is the antenna pointing, and maybe you just kind of recognize that and only send that down. Right, to your point
Exactly.
earlier.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. But it's interesting. Oh, sorry, just to finish that point, Rob. I thought that was really good. And like, obviously, I agree with you. Which is maybe we should disagree
Yeah.
more. But it's interesting. Like, we are so not bound by downlink at the moment that we just send everything down, even though that might be
Yeah.
true. And every time I think it'd be nice to do onboard compute so we could get images back faster, but then it's just like there's almost no difference. So it's been an interesting kind of debate.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
All right. So just changing gears a little bit. Well, one of my favorite topics is learning about Australian businesses that are having success overseas. And as an Aussie who's been working in the US in the space industry for 15 years, I'm always interested in how a company like HEO approaches the US market. You've established you've been doing business with the US government for a number of years, but you've established an office there, I think, in the last 12 months in DC. Can you just tell us about like how you came to make that decision? How did you go about even in doing that, and how's it going so far?
Yeah, totally. So, really quick kind of background is that this technology was not just highly classified; it was also highly regulated in the US when we came along. And and again, being an Australian company, we just had no idea. We looked at our own laws and we're like, yeah, we can look at spy satellites if we want, and there's no regulation to stop us. And we worked with nations where that was also true when we were using their hardware. Obviously, us existing has allowed the US to both declassify and deregulate, and it means that we can now access hardware from US companies, which has been really amazing. But it was because a foreign entity, us, was able to perform this technology that was previously highly classified. So they said, well, there's no reason for us to kind of hold those rules. So continuing
Could a
to be
US
oh yeah, go on. Yep.
Could a US company, a US startup, have done this like at the same time when you did it?
Not when we started, but they could today.
Yeah, that's super. That's really interesting.
Yeah. So actually, I think this is true for the majority of industries. I think in Australia we did launch rockets in the early days, and so actually we have a lot of old legacy rocket regulations. So I think I'd buy that it's difficult to launch rockets from here because
just ask Gilmore.
Yeah, exactly. And none of the regulators from then are still around, so they don't know what rules they can break. I think there's some of that thing going on. But the majority of things we haven't done here, so we don't actually have regulatory baggage, which is good because in the US, that regulatory arrangement was legacy and it wasn't fit for purpose anymore. So a lot of our customers in the US were so stoked when we came around because they said, look, we've been trying to declassify and at the moment, it just takes one person to veto declassification for it not to happen. And that's why we're overclassifying things.
Yeah.
But you coming along, we're able to kind of say, well, what if someone else in another allied nation could do this? And then the person that would veto every time, or the group of that, would say, oh yeah, we can agree to that. And so that was written in. And so as soon as we came along, they're like, great, trigger, done. We're deregulating, declassifying. So that was really interesting. So that's how we came to be. In terms of how we started the office, so I was listening to Trey Stevens actually from Andrew, and he was saying, well, if you're going to have US business, you're going to have to hire lobbyists as soon as possible. And so we did. Originally, it was me going over there and kind of engaging with the lobbyists every single month for a week every month. And that was not sustainable.
No.
And I had a fresh kid at that time. Like my eldest kid had just been born, so it was not a great situation for my family. So that's how that started. But fortunately, we had a really great network. We had really great customers. Some of our customers had people that were just cycling out of government and going into industry. And so that network, we were able to really push and get some really great people that had both that customer side experience as well as some industry experience and hire them. So honestly, really excited with our how team's progressing over there, and it's been really positive so far.
That's great. How many total employees do you have now globally?
Oh, globally? Okay, good.
Yeah.
31. Yeah. Well, you were going to ask US office, and I'm like, yeah, it's 3. So, but
That
they're
was my follow-up
accomplishing
question, Will.
amazing
Yeah.
things. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So
I do think I think it's
yeah.
unbelievable. It was 50 years though that that this stuff was just starting. I mean, that's a long
Yeah.
time ago. I mean, that was right
And
after the Apollo days.
yeah, and it was when they were still like doing the canister with the film tape, right? And then
Oh
Oh
shooting
yeah,
it
yeah.
yeah,
into Earth, and the helicopter would get it. That was those days. Like
That's amazing. Yeah.
it's
incredible.
like huge credit, but also huge credit for keeping it secret for 5 decades. Because when we started and we were talking to commercial customers, they're like, clearly this is impossible because I've not seen an image before. We're like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
trust us, we've got the images, we've taken them. And then it took us several years to find for the secret to break. Like it was a few-year process. And
Wow.
we're like, oh, we're not geniuses. They were just really good at keeping secrets. Oh, okay.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
it's just going back to the point about like you were in a unique position because you're an Australian company and there were no regulations. Like, I mean, like a lot of like really successful startups, like they find a way. Maybe not because of technology, but because there's a regulatory loophole or something like
Yeah.
that. So I was just interested, like, was that were you conscious of that gap when you started the business, or was it you just kind of this sounded like
Sorry.
a cool idea and you discovered it afterwards?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, right? Like, I think there's an element of making our own luck here. Like, yes, there's definitely luck, but we've tried hundreds of things that haven't worked out. So I think that's part of the key element, and I think there's probably the more we've been thinking about it, the more we're like, actually, I think there's a lot of benefits to being an Australian that we want to explore as well. I think there are benefits to being in the US as well, but I think
Yeah.
a lot of entrepreneurs are filling those gaps quickly. And so actually, I think there's less kind of greenfield opportunities right now. And I think this is why we're seeing spikes in aerospace wages, which is very good for the employees. And I'm really happy that that's happening. But it's making it difficult to kind of launch new space companies, especially when like a lot of talent's just getting sucked into Kuiper or
Yeah.
Blue Origin or SpaceX or whoever. And
Yeah,
I
those
don't
Kuiper
think,
guys. I don't know about those Kuiper guys.
What?
I don't know about
Which
those
guys?
Kuiper
Which
guys.
guys?
Yeah.
by the
Mhm.
way, I do not think that it is a coincidence that both SpaceX and Kuiper built factories across the road from the old Boeing factory. And 2 to 3 years later, doors started falling off planes and wheels started not deploying properly. Like,
Yeah.
I do not think that is a coincidence. I think they're linked. And I think it goes back to actually, there's not enough great engineers. And so we've got to make them way more efficient and get the whole allied base kind of working on this problem set. So, yeah,
And you have a whole generation right now that's retiring at the same time, right?
it's
I mean, that's the other
nuts.
problem. That's the other
It's
problem.
nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have really, really cool companies right now that a lot of these young kids want to go and get experience. And I, I hear a lot of them, and I know some that are very close to me, and like young professionals, and they're saying, "Oh, well, I just want to go to SpaceX for 2 years, and I'll just like blow through it, and I'll do everything I can. I won't sleep, I won't eat, but you know what? I'll have it on my resume, and I'll learn a ton. I'd much rather do that than go to Boeing and sit at a desk all day and
Yeah.
maybe have every other Friday off." So there's some of those things that I think are really, you're right. I think a lot of it's linked. It can't be a coincidence, you know.
Mm,
So, but it's an
That is a
interesting
great
problem
point. Yeah.
it's an
Yeah.
interesting problem to solve. And I think,
totally.
I was reading something, can't remember what it was, a couple months ago, where, which also I think is pretty scary to me, is that China graduates more engineers per year from undergrad school than we produce just undergraduates totally in total. So, like, that's an issue. But at
Yeah.
the same time, I think we're seeing a lot of young people wanting to study engineering now, so that's a good thing.
Yeah.
But we're definitely in that kind of weird, I think, I would say like a catch up mode right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, to your point, Rob, all you have to believe is that, not it doesn't even need to be on par. It just needs to be like at least half the proportion of Chinese people are as smart as the smartest US people to be like,
Mm-hmm.
crap, we are at least 2x behind the number of engineers that they can muster. So I think it is a numbers game. I think what this means is that the alliance play is the play. It's the right play, and yeah,
Mm.
it's just about making sure that that talent can be activated. The other thing that I notice is that not as much talent as you would think wants to move internationally. So I think that's
Mm.
another reason why you've got to have like multiple bases in the US. Like, maybe a few states have to have like headquarters for companies, but then, yeah, like you need companies to be a part of the industrial base outside of the US probably as well. So that was weird kind of rabbit hole I went down one time as well. It's like, oh, people don't move. They just, get jobs in other industries. Like finance
Right.
industry in Sydney is going nuts because we're underemploying aerospace people. I'm like, so we're getting great finance products, but we should probably be putting them to work
Yeah.
on aerospace. So, yeah.
Totally. Well, this has been a great discussion. I loved learning more about HEO, things I didn't know before. So thanks so much for joining us. We
It's fun.
always like to finish the show at a lighthearted moment. I do want to say, like, um, I had this stupid grin on my face at the start of the episode when you were sort of talking about the origins of HEO and
Mm.
taking non-Earth imagery, and my mind went to as you were describing looking at asteroids and stuff like that. My mind went to that to Austin Powers when they're tracking tracking the objects in space.
So we haven't seen
So
like, what's that pie guy called? The pie boy or something?
yeah, and it's like Johnson. It's like that scene where sorry. So for our viewers, if anyone's watching this video, that's why I had a stupid look on my face at the start. But the question I did want to ask, and I actually did I went down a little bit of a rabbit hole on this myself. Who is your favorite? I said space baddie. Rob didn't know what that meant, but your favorite space villain from fiction or movies?
Oh shit! You gave me this one ahead of time, and
I did.
I didn't actually come up with a great answer. Who's my favorite space baddie? Oh shit! Like, is there a real life one? I don't know. Like, yeah, actually, maybe Werner von Braun. Like, I mean, actually a fan, but he's kind of like a space baddie and very enigmatic
Oh,
as well. So
interesting.
I
All right,
think,
so a
yeah,
real
let's go
person,
with
not
him.
fictional person. All right.
Yeah, that's right. By the way, speaking of fiction, he wrote a fiction book. Have you guys read that?
No.
Which
Me neither.
what's the name?
I can't remember. I haven't been able to find it, but it's apparently very poorly written. I've read some of his nonfiction, which was like it was well written, but it wasn't very like the characters were very
Not very
boring and
exciting.
stuff. I read some of his nonfiction, and I think that was pretty good. But yeah. Anyway, so he tried his hand at fiction writing.
All right. What about you, Rob?
Oh, I guess I mean this is kind of this might be kind of a easy answer, but Boba Fett was pretty awesome all across
Oh
the
yeah,
Star Wars. I mean, that guy
yeah,
was pretty cool. I
he
mean,
was cool. So I found this, and I was looking at it before we got on to record. I actually found. I'm going to put the link in the show notes. There was this guy. He's like top 50 space villains, and it was really cool. And I was sort of going through and going, oh, I'd forgotten about him, and there are a couple that stood out to me. There are a bunch of Doctor Who references because I was a
Mm.
big Doctor Who guy when I was a kid. Like growing up in Australia in the 80s, like 5 o'clock every afternoon on ABC was Tom Baker was like my generational sort of Doctor Who for anyone that, well, surely you watch Doctor Who, like people
A little bit. I think the
a little
5
bit.
a.m.
Okay,
slot, or 5 p.m. slot. But
maybe
yeah.
I'm not, maybe I'm on my own here, but
I'm too
Davros,
young
he
to
was
know who
this
that. I'm too young. I don't know.
Davros, he was like the guy that invented the Daleks. I'd forgotten about him. That was kind of cool.
Oh.
Ash from Alien, the cyborg that went nuts. That was a good one. I watched that on a plane.
Oh.
And actually, one of my favorites, and this is one of my favorite space movies from Event Horizon, and I've talked about this on a previous show, but Dr. William Weir, was Sam Neill played this character. He became this sort of demonic sort of space villain. I think that was a good one too.
Mm-hmm.
I think the alien from Predator gave me nightmares for years when I saw that one. That's another one. I mean, that was, I think I saw that maybe when I was in my, I don't know, 10 or 12 or something. And that was just, that definitely gave me nightmares. That's when Arnold was a stud.
That's right. He's still a stud.
Yeah, he is, I think.
Yeah. Well, good stuff. Well, look, Will, thanks again. Thanks again for joining us. I think with me moving down, I think we'll have to check in, and if people are still listening to us in 6 months, maybe we can do a show together. We'll get Rob down here as well, and we can do one face to face, or maybe in DC. Maybe if you go to DC next.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Will, let us know when you're in DC next too. It'll be great to see you in person. But thanks a lot for this. It was super interesting today.
No, really fun, guys. Really appreciate what you're doing. Yeah. All right, catch you.
Thanks, Will, and thanks everyone for joining us. And if you enjoy the show, make sure you write a review and subscribe and tell your friends. But otherwise, look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks. Cheers.
Bye-bye.